It is the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. Let's get right to today's California report at randywangradio.substack.com. And we start in the Pacific Palisades, where yet another insult is being placed with the injury the victims of the Palisades fire have already felt for the past year and a half. And that is, in order from the city of Los Angeles and Karen Bass to have anyone in the Palisades that has a burned out lot or a home that they can't live in, a lot of them have been using storage containers to store some of their furniture and their belongings because they can't live in their house. And of course, those storage containers are in front of their house on the street. And that caused the city of Los Angeles to not read the room, send out notices saying, no, you need to move those or they're going to be towed and you're going to be fined. This is the same city of Los Angeles that does not tow RVs that are not supposed to be there, that does not tow derelict, unsafe RVs in all different parts of the city of Los Angeles. There's that video of Matthew Seedorf in South LA where everyone was covering the homeless woman living in a sewer. And one of the things you saw is the street sweeper bobbing and weaving around all the RVs because they don't do anything about that. The only time they care about public space is when they can go after a homeowner, and they don't even care that they're going after the victims of the fire, who were still, for the most part, kind of in a holding pattern because insurance still hasn't paid them out. The city is doing minimal to do anything about that. The state is doing minimal to do anything about that. And the federal government is doing minimal to do anything about that. So as soon as this went out, obviously the mayor who's running for re-election realized that this looks bad. So she said, we're pausing that. Never mind. We not a big deal. We don't need to move them right now. But it is just another instance of where this city gets in its own way, and the processes are so entrenched in bureaucracy, nobody even thinks. Like when the LAFD sent out notices to these same people in the Palisades to clear out the brush in their burned out lots or they're going to get fined. Like, seriously, is nobody paying attention to what we're doing here? And if somebody is paying attention, but they're afraid to raise questions, they're afraid to challenge the bureaucracy, challenge the structure, challenge the mayor on some of this idiocy, there's something needs to be done here. Now, an issue that drives me crazy in the city of LA, because this is not a thing in other cities around the world. This might be a thing in a few other cities in the state, but for the most part, this rampant copper wire theft that we see all throughout Los Angeles, it drives me crazy.
Let's criminalize catalytic converters. Let's criminalize copper.
In fact, my home, the neighborhood that I'm in, was the victim of a copper wire theft a few years ago. It took about 3 months to get that repaired. The timeline's only gotten significantly worse since then. We're now, if your street lights are out, good luck if they get fixed within a year. And what do you know? It happened again in Van Nuys, and they're not just stealing copper now. They're also stealing internet cables. So they're opening up a vault box from AT&T, and they're literally trying to drag them out of the ground by using a car. It's completely insane that we allow this. And there are two sides to allowing this. One is that we are not going after the people who are doing this brazenly. When there's so much film and video of this, we don't hear about a whole lot of arrests. But I do understand maybe that's hard to do. One thing that we don't do that seems to be a lot easier, and this is a question that I have for the LA city attorney and anybody who's running for that office. It's a question I have for the DA. It's a question I have for code enforcement and so many other situations where the city of LA doesn't seem to want to go after the people who are buying these products. When you steal copper wire, You don't just sell that at MacArthur Park. You don't just sell it on eBay. You don't just fence it the way you fence so many other stolen goods. You have to take it to a recycler or a junker or a smelter. And as far as I know, those are all licensed businesses. So the question that I have is, why is it so hard to go after them? The businesses that in effect are probably selling the same smelted copper back to the city. Now, while all that is going on, you also have to think about Karen Bass's latest ploy as she runs for re-election that, hey, we're going to raise taxes by raising property tax fees to pay for 60,000 solar lights. And solar lights are the answer to all of this because there is no copper. Now, they actually haven't figured out how they do solar lights for much taller lights than regular street lights, so that's an issue. But something that really irked me when Karen Bass was announcing this, she was asked, how are you going to prioritize the lights that you're going to install? Which ones are you going to do first? And you figure, okay, maybe it's the places that have the highest likelihood of car accidents, the highest likelihood of pedestrians getting run over, or the highest corridors of crime. No, you know what she said? The priority will be the places where we're going to have the World Cup watch parties. And that is so tone deaf. And in fact, every single time Karen Bass talks about the World Cup or she talks about the Olympics, me as a local born and raised here, I get even more irritated with her because it sure seems like her priorities are pretending that the city looks good for some international visitors for a couple of weeks this summer and a couple of weeks in 2 summers, than making sure that the lives of the people here are improved. And another way that you can definitely see that is the continuing devastation on our streets that we see with the homelessness crisis, including yet another just completely bonkers scene. This time, it's an entire bus bench, an entire bus shelter that's been taken over by an obviously mentally ill homeless person. There is trash everywhere. He is speaking complete gibberish. There was a situation where Fox 11 tried to interview the guy, NBC4 tried to interview the guy, and you call the city. You say, hey, all the stuff that you're saying about you're doing about Project Insight Safe and clearing encampments, here's a very obvious case of somebody that is not only obstructing the right of way, stopping anybody from actually using that bus bench, but is in a desperate situation where he needs help. And you know what happened? It's wild. This is a Christina Gonzalez piece, and you got to watch the entire thing. It's at randywangradio.substack.com. Because Karen Bass puts out a statement showing that everything that Karen Bass said when she became mayor is crap. Because when Karen Bass became mayor, she said, we are locking arms with the county. We declared a state of emergency. The county declared a state of emergency. We are no longer pointing fingers at each other. And what does Karen Bass, who's running for re-election, do when she sees the video emerging of the crazy man living at the bus bench? She says, oh, well, he's mentally ill. That's the county's problem. And it doesn't end there. Then, apparently, because they sat and waited for hours to see if anybody was going to come give outreach to this guy. And some people from the county finally show up. And they tell Fox 11's Christina Gonzalez, as long as you're here filming this, we're not going to help him. Yeah, you heard me right. They don't want on camera all of the things they're doing to help the homeless. So as long as Fox 11 was there, they left. They didn't do a damn thing. And between the woman living in the storm drain and this guy and all of this incredible video that is going everywhere, it shows that the city and the county do not care about helping the people that need the help the most. And I am done with anybody saying, well, it's their right. It's their right to remain on the street spouting out gibberish, causing a public health hazard for the rest of us. No, it's not. And it is on us if you were going to say, if you're campaigning on taking care of the homeless problem, why wouldn't you work on taking care of the most obvious parts of the homeless problem, the most visual parts of the homeless problem? But of course, we have a whole bunch of corrupt ideologues who don't actually want to do anything to solve this problem. And that's why they all got to go. Every single member of the Board of Supervisors is a complete failure on this, including Catherine Barger. And Karen Bass has to go, and the vast majority of the city council has to go, because these people are not taking this issue seriously. Even though it has a ton of problems, why are we not even seeing LA County or the city of LA try to implement care court on somebody like this? Or the woman that is living in the storm drain. We've done all these reforms to conservatorships, but we don't want to do that. We have this insane ideology that all help must be voluntary, even when you are not in a state of mind to be able to help yourself. Now, on to something a little more fun. The 91 freeway is pretty notorious at this point for people trying to cut in line and use those HOV lanes and the express lanes even when they can't. They're not supposed to. Now, the way it works is you can pay that expensive toll, or if you've got 3 people in the car or 2 people in the car, well, you can use that lane for free. So they have started releasing what these videos look like with the high-tech cameras they have in there. And what do you know? They're showing people that are putting a wig on top of a seat. They've got a mannequin in there. People are very, very, very creative when it comes to getting around the traffic and trying to use these express lanes. You know, they keep talking about adding these express lanes to the 405 freeway and the Sepulveda Pass. And I am torn about it because I'm in a situation where I could probably afford it, but it's going to make traffic worse for all those other lanes and the people that can't afford it, although I would definitely be trying to expense that to the company. But still, I don't know if these things are the solution. You know what's a solution? You know what takes cars off the road? I'm going to keep saying this, especially as we're in, this war with Iran, and who knows how long that thing's going to go on for. And gas prices just hit $6 in the state of California. And yeah, that's pretty bad for California, but gas prices just hit $4 in the rest of the country. So this isn't all just a California thing. The entire country's hurting with this. If we need to lower our demand on gasoline, it's not that difficult. We did it inadvertently during COVID. I'm not saying that the lockdowns were a good thing, but I'm saying there are certain situations where incentivizing remote work can have some profound effects. You only need to take 20% of the cars off the road to get those freeways moving. So if you had a rotating basis and you had it organized and you had it scheduled, I wish someone running for mayor would talk about that. I wish someone running for mayor would talk about the one issue where it's not homelessness, it's not housing. Talk to me about traffic. Because I'll tell you right now, the K-line extension to West Hollywood sounds great, but that's not taking any cars off the road for probably 20 to 30 years. That doesn't work. What are you going to think about today? And I'm asking this to every single candidate. We're going to talk to one of the candidates for mayor next week. What is your plan to relieve traffic now? Because what we're doing right now is building really, 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 really slowly. And everything that we've built hasn't really had a noticeable difference in taking cars off the road. It's time to think bolder. It's time to think better. And there are smarter ways to do this. I advocate for remote work, not fully, but it definitely can be organized with the companies that can do it. I think city workers should be able to do that. I think there's a lot of things we can think about. And it seems to be the one issue where nobody running for office even talks about how awful the traffic is. Now, speaking of traffic, as we move into the Bay Area, Dan Noyes, who is the investigative reporter for the I-Team at ABC7 in the Bay, he is incredible. He's the guy that broke a whole lot of the stories when it came to the Sheng Tao investigation.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And lately, he has been getting into what's going on in San Leandro. San Leandro, this little city south of Oakland. In San Leandro, the person who is the sergeant for internal affairs sent a 9-page report to the city manager talking about all of this malfeasance going on in this department. Yesterday, the story was that San Leandro PD picked up a homeless man who was making people feel uncomfortable in a shopping center. And they picked him up after the ambassadors tried to get him to go away, and that didn't work. Someone thought a fight was going to break out. So San Leandro PD get on the scene. They pick this guy up. They force him into the car. He hasn't committed a crime. They realize that they can't book him for anything, not even a hold, because he really hasn't done anything. And they decide the best situation here is to dump him in Oakland, nowhere close to a BART station, so he can't come back. And you can have differing opinions on whether that's a great thing to do. We know it's done. We know Burbank does that. We know Culver City does that. We know that the smaller cities dump their homeless into the cities that tolerate it. And really, the onus of that should be on the cities that tolerate it, because if nobody tolerates it, then maybe they get uncomfortable enough that they actually have to take the help. But the story today is just a little more, you can't really look at this one in any light, but this is unbelievable. A woman was driving home and her mirror gets clipped by a Jeep. She notices that the Jeep has sirens in the back that almost immediately go off. This woman in the Jeep is the police chief for San Leandro. She was driving in the shoulder, clips the mirror, does not stop. The woman who gets her mirror clipped calls the CHP, gets the license plate number. They tell her, oh, that's a San Leandro PD car. So they call San Leandro PD and they say, no, that's not our car. And she says, yes, it is. And they say, oh, well, how about this? If you don't report this as a crime, we'll fix your car. And that's the kind of insanity that begins in this story of the police chief of San Leandro trying to cover up that she clipped somebody's mirror and didn't stop. It is well worth your time. Everything Dan Noyes does is well worth your time to check that out. In Oakland, they're closing another supportive housing site, one of these safe parking sites, because, they ran out of funding and the people that were there temporarily have been there for 5 years. It's just insane. Now, I love this story. In Milpitas, which is a smaller town in the Bay Area, the mayor of Milpitas wants to give out free security cameras to homeowners that can't afford them. You know, like you get a little rebate, or we'll give you cash to go buy a Google Nest Cam, not a Ring doorbell. And they're specifically said Ring's not allowed in the program. And I think that's for good reason. But I love this idea. I think more cameras are better. And once you have one of these things, you really, really enjoy using it. Now, I will just say, I had a Ring doorbell cam for many years, and I liked it. It worked out really well. Something happened in the last 6 months. And I think it's because they tried to change how their system works, and they tried to upsell you with all this AI nonsense that nobody wants. My Ring doorbell cam got so unreliable, I had to stop using it. And so we thought, okay, maybe this one's just old. Let's buy a new one. So we buy a new one on Amazon. It's worse than the old one we had. So at that point, we said, screw it, return both. And we got the Google Nest, and I like it a lot better. The Google one is a much higher quality picture. It accurately is flagging things at the door, and it's not missing things. I'm a big fan. Maybe there's other ones out there, and if you have any suggestions on the doorbell cam that you like, all I'm saying is that Ring sucks now, and I'm not even getting into all of their weird AI technology where it's going to track a lost dog in that Super Bowl ad, but I like the Google one. I like it. That's what we got right now for the California report. There's a whole lot more on there. I can only cover so much in the opening segment, but we'll get to more if we have time. But check it out for yourself. It's my curated list that I put together every single day for you and for me, so I have a record of where my show prep is. Like if I ever want to go back and find something, I literally have a post every day of every YouTube video. Because you should have seen what my Watch Later playlist used to be on YouTube. It used to be insane. Check it out at randywangradio.substack.com. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. It's April 1st, and that means Bob Bonta. His card room regulations where you can't play blackjack-style games at card houses took effect. If you're wondering why he did that, look who donates to his campaign. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. It is the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. Check out the Substack. I work on it every single day. A list of all the videos that are my show prep at randywangradio.substack.com. Our next guest is a formerly incarcerated Christian conservative and a founding member and executive director of Woman to Woman, working directly with incarcerated women across the country in both state and federal prisons. Amie Ichikawa, welcome to the News Blitz.
Hi, Randy. Thanks for having me.
Let's go ahead and start off by telling us about your story and what is your organization all about?
Well, my organization is myself and my two partners. We're all formerly incarcerated, and we wanted to create a resource hub for incarcerated women that were reentering society so that they could have direct access to the resources necessary for a successful reentry. And at the same time, we started developing the organization. California passed SB 132, which is the gender self-ID law, the Transgender Respect Agency and Dignity Act, that allowed for fully intact biological males to identify as female and transfer to the women's facilities. So we kind of had to shift gears and focus entirely on that because we saw it as a female human rights crisis, and we still see it as a female human rights crisis. So we mostly advocate for women who are struggling with that, who've been assaulted, whose rights are being constantly violated because of this gender inclusive policy that has swept the nation.
I'm sure you probably have tons and tons and tons of anecdotes. Can you share with us just generally some of the situations that have happened because of this legislation just in the last few years?
Certainly. Well, first of all, one of the things that directly impacted us and our ability to, be a successful organization is that we were blacklisted entirely just for speaking about this. We didn't realize how politically, entangled this topic was. When I first started speaking about this, I figured, hey, who's going to argue? Who's going to be upset about me saying there shouldn't be men in women's prisons? But everyone was very upset. So it's been really hard for us to navigate through the nonprofit industrial complex here in California, but we've had much better luck nationwide. As far as the women inside are concerned, one of the worst things that happened early on in the game is there was a lifer who became pregnant by one of the transfers from the men's prison that she was in a very toxic relationship with. And she was beaten until she miscarried. And the staff at the Central California Women's Facility had to bring the cadaver dogs out to look for potential fetal remains from this incident. And, I really wanted to have some hard data on this. So I put in a public information request, and they did respond by saying they did have to, have an investigation searching for fetal remains, but it was inconclusive. But regardless of whether or not it was inconclusive, the entire prison was extremely damaged from having to sit there and watch out of their windows the dogs looking for a baby on the yard. That's one of the more morbid things. But nationwide, women are just generally who are almost all survivors of some form of sexual abuse, are now being housed with fully intact men, many of whom are registered sex offenders. So this is pretty much the opposite of everything that would constitute rehabilitation,
Where do specifically in California, where do the prison guard unions land on this issue? Because this seems like a situation that makes their job even harder.
Exactly. You would think, but they've been silent. We tried to get a hold of that union, the CCPOA, very early on in 2021, because I thought we could, possibly co-file lawsuits, or we could, help them seek out lawyers that would assist them with lawsuits, but we didn't get any action. I mean, there are female guards now that are forced to strip out men. That's their job, and they're not allowed to complain about it. But there are very few complaints. Most people are afraid to lose their job or afraid to lose their pension. We do know of a couple of female officers that have retired early specifically because of this. But that's, a very, very humongous, powerful. I think it's the biggest union in the state of California. It's pretty crazy, and they're very tied up with Newsom.
Oh, they for sure are. It's one of the bizarre things where we've made so many headlines about closing prisons, but the prison budget has never gone down, and I don't think we've ever reduced the population of prison guards. So in one instance, you can look at that and say, well, the reason that the cost per prisoner keeps going up is because we've reduced the available bed space, but we haven't reduced one prison guard.
Exactly. And I think the budget this year is $18 billion, which is $4 billion more than it was last year. And that makes absolutely no sense with the prison closures. It doesn't make sense. But I mean, you could kind of counter in the aging prison population, but the care that they get is so poor, it doesn't constitute a need for $4 billion more dollars at all.
Now, are there any, guidelines that you have to, qualify for to be able to be transferred to a women's prison? Or you just say that you are that sex, and because of the state law that we just have to say, okay, that's who you are, that's who you identify as, welcome to the women's prison?
Yes, I wish that I could tell you different, but the only requirement is self-identification. There is a long waiting list of almost 900 people now, men from the men's prisons. And the committee does move slow, but that is the only requirement. The law specifically says that was so evil geniusly written by Senator Scott Wiener that nobody's, criminal history, physical attributes, sexual orientation can be taken into consideration when deciding whether or not someone is appropriate for the move. And there are no requirements for hormone replacement therapy, sexual reassignment surgery. All someone has to do is tell a staff member, not even a medical staff member, that they are female now, and they don't even require a diagnosis of gender dysphoria.
Seems like a system that can be very easily exploited. And I got to imagine for the kind of work that you originally started this organization for, helping women get set up on the outside, helping them with the rehabilitation. We call it the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. That's got to be a lot harder when you're constantly looking over your shoulder because you're worried that you may get sexually assaulted.
Right. It's women are currently in a constant state of hypervigilance. I think rehabilitation is, if it's not on the back burner, it's just completely out the window. And my concern doesn't just include the women, but even for the sex offenders, for the rapists, for the men, they're not being afforded any opportunity to rehabilitate either, because the system is encouraging them to maintain their status and their active criminal thinking. You're putting people in a position where they're going to reoffend. No matter, it's not if, it's when. So it's just a huge disservice to everybody. And I don't think that the author of the bill, has any concern, because this is all part of a greater agenda just to erase women entirely.
I mean, it definitely seems, and Scott Wiener's been a huge offender of this, in the name of ideology and some kind of equality, it's actually making a lot of people, especially women, less safe. Let's talk about, him trying to decriminalize, prostitution, which actually has led to a rise in human trafficking. So this is just par for the course with Scott Wiener.
Yes. And he's really, we've come a long way in our, love-hate relationship. I just despised him early on in the game, but I don't know what happened. My heart is softened, and I pray for the guy regularly. But his responses to the most basic human rights issues are absolutely off the wall. Last year, we sponsored a bill by Senator Shannon Grove, SB 311, that would have created separate housing units for the men in the women's prison, which was a pretty mild ask. It was a pretty, low bar we set. We weren't saying get them out. We weren't saying, we weren't being extremists. It was just a very simple ask. They still could have programmed together, but Scott Wiener publicly said, well, they need their girl time. That's interesting. And then there was also a part of the law where it would have prohibited registered sex offenders, from being able to qualify for a transfer. And his response to that was, you can't discriminate against sex offender registrants, because there's people on the sex offender registry for crimes as simple as having sex in public. And I had to pick my jaw up off the floor in the committee room. I couldn't believe that there is an elected official just, defending sex offenders so hard. We were all flabbergasted. Thank God for Senator Kelly Sayarto, who really got into him, and I thought his head was going to explode. He was so mad, but he explained why the sex offender registry was created, because Scott Wiener was trying to say that it was created to further marginalize LGBTQ people. And Senator Sayarto went to tell, a very graphic story about exactly why the sex offender registry was created. And we all know it's for people who can't control themselves sexually. And it was just horrible to have to sit there and watch Senator Wiener just make excuse after excuse for, having a pro-pedo agenda and being so pro-predator in the state. And everybody's just shaking in their boots, not even wanting to vote the right way because they're so scared of him.
We're speaking with Amie Ichikawa. She is with an organization called Woman to Woman. You can check out their website at womaniiwoman.org. Now, is there any legislation that your group is sponsoring this year that you need more attention on that hopefully we can get across the finish line?
We don't have anything cooking this year. We're kind of, really trying to focus on federal legislation. We're hoping to get the Prison Rape Elimination Act refurbished. It really needs an overhaul to include, the current female human rights crisis in our nation's women's prisons. And we're going to be working closely with the DOJ in their upcoming investigation into the practice of housing men in women's prisons in California. And we really hope that leads to a nationwide investigation, because we don't want to leave any woman forgotten.
Well, and that's the thing. And that's why it's so important that you're speaking out about this, because this is a particular portion of the population that is completely ignored and completely forgotten. And you may have some people that don't care what happens to the people in prison, but eventually they're going to get out. The question is, are they going to get out more well-adjusted or less well-adjusted? And this seems like a situation where they may be way less well-adjusted when they get out.
Right. And for the folks who don't think that this deserves to be headline, or it shouldn't even be covered because, they shouldn't have committed crimes, or that's what they get, I really have to say, a lot of people are just one glass of Chardonnay away from vehicular manslaughter and being right in that same situation, being bunked up with Bubba. And, what the government will do to the least of us, they will most definitely at some point do to the rest of us. So I try and encourage people to understand you can tell so much by a country in accordance to the way they treat their prisoners. And right now, it would be very easy for an outsider to look in and say that America hates women.
We're speaking with Amie Ichikawa from Woman to Woman. Now, we've talked about this insane policy where men are being allowed to transfer into women's prisons. Are there any other specific areas where you think California is failing the incarcerated female population?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the way the funding works, women are only 10% of the incarcerated population. So I understand that they can't pay a whole lot of attention to them. But as far as programming is concerned and staffing is concerned, CCWF, which is apparently a level 4 California state prison, gets the funding that's the equivalent of a men's level 2. They have the staff that's the same as a men's level 2, and they expect them to perform at a level 4. And it's not fair on the staff. It's not fair on the inmates. It's not fair on their families. It's not right for the community. It's such a horrible imbalance. And also medical. There's women that have to petition for things like knee replacements, back surgery, and they have to do this while they're watching men come back from, Beverly Hills plastic surgeons with brand new breasts, new facelifts, Rogaine for their male pattern baldness that is exacerbated by the wrong sex hormones. I mean, there's a lot of imbalances there. And, there's just so much work to be done. And I'm hoping that, a new governor is really going to make an impact in that area.
If there are any women listening and they want to get involved with your organization, what can they do?
Please, send us a message to the website at www.womaniiwoman.org. We're happy to, speak to anybody that has great ideas, even bad ideas, we'll take them. Prayers and stamps are always high in demand. And if you happen to have a loved one who's incarcerated, who's struggling with something like this, we are here to help. And, we respond to everybody, not always quickly, but we will respond to absolutely every message we get.
Amie Ichikawa from the organization Woman to Woman. You can go to the website, womaniiwoman.org. Thank you so much for coming on today and telling us about this situation. Thank you, Randy. You're awesome. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. The city of Sacramento is considering allowing tiny cottages on wheels. Wait, isn't that just a mobile home? You ever wonder why we don't just put the homeless in mobile homes? Because a single wide manufacturer's cost is just $87,000. Double wide, $157,000. You could probably put 4 or 5 people in there. But no. We need to build $1 million apartments or $100,000 tiny homes. Isn't it just weird that we don't want to just build more trailer parks? Why is that? It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. Over the weekend, we had one of my favorite meals. I'm so glad my wife suggested it. Salmon avocado pesto over chickpea pasta and roasted tomatoes. It's so easy. Take your salmon. You can just get the boneless, skinless salmon at Trader Joe's. Cook it at 350 for 30 minutes on a sheet pan, just salt and pepper, maybe a little oil. And then on a separate sheet pan, have cherry tomatoes. Toss those in oil and a little bit of salt. Those go for a half hour. Then you've got your pasta. I like the Trader Joe's chickpea pasta. 6 minutes and it's good to go. Now, the pesto, which I do avocado pesto, it's much healthier, but it gives you that flavor. Take a bowl, add basil, garlic, avocado, lemon, and olive oil. And use an immersion blender, and it becomes this creamy, delicious, healthy pesto sauce. You toss that in your pasta, you top it with the roasted tomatoes, and top it with your salmon fillet. Mix all that together, and it is perfection. You can pair it with an Italian wine, or we paired it with a Fiddlehead Birdie Baby 2015 Pinot Noir, which is a bigger Pinot Noir than Kathy usually does, but it was perfect with this. I'll have the picture at some point on my socials, so check it out. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC.